Welcome back, regular viewers, and welcome to any new viewers out there. This is Wednesday Night Sessions. I am your host, Mitch Nobis, coming to you from Farmington, Michigan, the basement office for folks that have watched before. Did a little bit of reconfiguring between seasons 3 and 4, so the toys are now mostly over there, although there's probably some nonsense behind me. I think that's a Star Wars. I don't know, whatever. I'm excited for tonight's episode. Joining me is Howard Mittelmark. We have been making dumb jokes to each other on Twitter for probably a long time now. I don't really pay attention to time anymore. But he's one of my favorite people on Twitter. And then last year, his novel Written Out came out. And even this year, again, time means nothing to me. It came out recently. And I think it is one of the most criminally under-discussed books in a long time. I like this book a lot. And so I'll let Howard tell you more about it if he wants to, but I'm excited to have him with us tonight. So Howard, let me pass it over to you.
Hi, thanks, Mitch. Yeah, it did come out last year, and I'm just going to read from it. You know, if you want to ask me any questions about it specifically afterwards, you're welcome to. But here is from chapter 6. Sarah had first come to me by way of my agent, Darius Crovent. Darius had sold my first novel, The Feeling I'm Not Feeling, whereupon I immediately resigned from my position as an associate editor at Random House. My plan had been to live off the $15,000 advance, against the advice of friends and colleagues, as well as various busybodies, my mother, my girlfriend at the time, my dentist, Stuart Rosenblatt, a series of cab drivers whose services I'd begun splurging on, until the arrival of the vast riches that were sure to come my way once the royalties started pouring in. The novel, however, was poorly received where it was received at all, and riches were not forthcoming. Last time I looked at my royalty statement, it had sold fewer than 1,200 copies. At this rate, I should earn out my advance sometime in the mid-2040s. While I was casting about for what to do next, checking the help wanteds and wondering if Random House still had a place for me, Darius came to me with a proposal. A celebrity memoir for which he'd gotten a considerable advance, in which the celebrity had made a lot of noise about writing himself, had come in a complete mess. If I could rewrite it quickly and keep it to myself, I would prevent a great deal of embarrassment for everyone involved. He offered me a generous amount of money, and I, of course, agreed. The book was a success, and I soon stopped looking for work because I became Darius's in-house fixer, his on-call book doctor. I polished novels before he auctioned them, made the memoirs of public figures sound insightful and intelligent, or authentic and humble as necessary. I developed a reputation, and agents and acquiring editors began steering their writers my way. I would never get rich doing piecework like this, but I was doing okay, better than okay, really, and I would never have gotten rich in a 10-to-8 job at Random House either. It gave me a place to stand while I wrote another novel, purchased another ticket in the lottery. I liked not having to go to an office, having no responsibilities other than making people's books better than they were when they came to me, something I was very good at. When my second novel, Cramming for the Turing Test, came out, Darius let slip that it seemed to be the only thing I was good at. I did not have a counter argument. All I'll say about my second novel is that I hope it someday does as well as my first. Sarah was one of the clients Darius asked me to work with. She was the opposite of somebody like Larry. She seemed to have been born hearing the music that made prose sing. But she also had something else. Writers like the author of A Bewilderment of Echoes were smart enough and had an imagination, but were unable to make the reader see what they saw, to bridge the gap between minds, to make a story spring to life instead of remaining words on a page. Sarah knew how to do that magic too. Darius had seen this in her beautifully written but static first novel, which had been her thesis project for her MFA. He might have sold it for $10,000 or $15,000, and it would probably have gotten some good reviews, but Darius was sure that with my help, it could do better. I seldom meet any of my editing clients. I actively avoid it. It's almost never helpful, and it requires a different set of skills entirely. The real work takes place on the page and can be accomplished emailing notes and revisions back and forth. Once I meet a client, though, someone who has entrusted me with their novel, the embodiment of their hopes and dreams, the repository as often as not of their self-worth, I become responsible for some degree of emotional support. And what begins as simple hand-holding can lead me to serving as both confessor and therapist. None of which I begrudge anyone is completely understandable, and I've been there myself, but I don't get paid anymore for all the time and energy it can take up. Sarah, though, was special. Her novel told me that, and the evidence mounted with our first few email exchanges. She was intelligent and earnest, wry and charming, and all that came through even in our brief initial correspondence. After some quick Googling, I suggested we meet, and over the next few months, sometimes by email, often on the phone, and occasionally sitting together in the back of a cafe, I showed Sarah how to move her story along, gently pushed her to make the plot more than a series of subtle Jamesian shifts in understanding, how to make regular readers, not just aesthetes and literary mandarins, want to turn pages. Literature is a permeable beast. It can survive a pulpy twist or two. Darius ended up getting her a respectable advance, and the book got respectable reviews, and I was pleased to find myself the one she called excitedly as each one appeared, and the one she turned to when it nonetheless became clear the book was not going to sell as well as we had all been hoping. By then, Sarah was 31. She had spent her post-collegiate 20s burning through a sizable trust fund and had put the last of it into her MFA, against all odds an investment that would pay off, but not quite yet. Her second novel was as promising as the first, and we immediately got to work making it even better. This time, no money changed hands. It didn't feel right. I let her buy me a drink now and then, dinner once or twice. At the end of one of those evenings, things between us changed. Sarah, I should mention, was lovely, and she carried herself with the grace and ease that comes from growing up with money. She was worldly in the way of someone who didn't hesitate to go to Berlin or Barcelona for a few months just because she felt like it. But she didn't know the working world, and more specifically, the publishing world. I was 15 years older, but I'd published 2 novels, ghosted some bestsellers, and had a decent income. I also had a lot to teach her, and she'd been lapping it up. So when she let me take her to my bed, it didn't seem unusual to me, and by never even glancing in the direction of its mouth, I was still riding that gift horse when the second novel came out. It got even better reviews than the first, but it still didn't sell well enough to earn out her advance. Her finances were getting tight when she showed me the first chapters of Santa Country, and as I've said, I recognized it instantly for what it was. People say publishing is a crapshoot, that nobody knows anything, but it's just not true. For a writer of my talent, sure, a few of us get lucky and most of us don't. The 3rd through 7th volumes of Harry Potter were not crapshoots, though. A scabrous tell-all by a sexually adventurous but previously private celebrity is not a crapshoot. Even a competently written entry in an established genre series is not a crapshoot. Publishers know beforehand how many copies it will sell with a surprising degree of precision. Some things you just know, and everything I knew told me that Santa Country was not a crapshoot. Still, publishing was going through some belt tightening, and Sarah's track record made it unlikely that the 50 pages she'd written would get her the money she needed to finish the book. I invited her to move into my rent-stabilized apartment with me. I would put aside my own novel, I said, and do everything I could to help her finish hers. Sometime after that, the book growing and getting better all the time, I asked her to marry me. It was late morning and I was just back from the gym. Sarah was at the desk we'd set up for her in the bedroom, staring through the screen of her laptop at the world she'd created, the characters she'd brought to life. As was our habit, I picked up a latte for her on the way home and I set it down beside her. As often as not, it would get cold before she noticed it was there, but that day I summoned her back. Sarah, I said, I think we should get married. I waited a minute. My words had a distance to travel before they reached her, I knew. And then she turned to me. What? I said we should get married. She stared at me, brow furrowed. Why? She asked. I was prepared to say something about love and what a good team we made, but I knew her well enough to recognize that she was asking herself more than she was asking me. I watched her think it through, consider the variables, weigh one thing against another. After a moment, she smiled at me and said, okay, that's fair. She turned her face up for a kiss and then reached out and gave my hand a squeeze. Love you, she said. You'll figure everything out? Don't you want to plan? I started to ask, but she turned back to her laptop and was already gone again. We were married at City Hall a few weeks later. A year after Santa Country took its seemingly permanent place on the bestseller list, Sarah's publisher flew her to London to do publicity for the UK edition. At a book party a few days after she left, I ran into Stephanie, a chic, attractive 40-ish editor at Random House, whom I'd known for years. We talked about Sarah's great success, of course, and after a couple of drinks, I'd confessed to the downside of becoming, in effect, the wife and helpmate of a star, a wag, as they'd put it in the Daily Mail. Stephanie had grown more sympathetic as she grew more tipsy and animated, and as the party wound down, we decided to continue the conversation at my place. We had a number of such conversations over the next few weeks. Sarah walked in on what would be the last of them. Come back, Mitch.
I'm coming. I'm on it. As I was telling Howard before we hit record, I don't often have the guest's book, but I've got a small bookcase in this office. So I was actually following along. I was like a kid in the classroom right there.
That's great.
Just reading along with you. So kind of got treated. You tricked me. I was already onto the next paragraph. Thank you very much for reading. We didn't do a lot of setting up the book. Written out, it's kind of like a dark humor or satire. Publishing industry and middle-aged white guys, like us. Only even worse choices than we tend to make. Sorry to the viewers, I had forgotten to switch back into the view where you can see both of us there. We're both here now. So it's just a fantastic book. It's funny. It's in spots laugh out loud funny, and in other spots like that uncomfortable sort of Larry David-ish kind of funny. Like, I shouldn't be laughing at this, but here I am laughing at this. And I love stuff like that. I find that I feel there's not really quite enough stuff like that in the written world. We've got great TV comedies and stuff out there and movies, but more funny literature. Perhaps this is my problem in life. I'm looking for sports literature and funny literature too.
Have you read Charles Portis?
Not much.
You should read him. He's really funny. He's great.
Yeah, I've only read snippets, really. I mean, I should answer no. I read so little, my answer should.
Oh, yeah, no, you should read him. You should read Dog of the South and True Grit. You have to read True Grit.
That's the part I've read, yeah. You're like the 9th person to say that in the last couple years, so I need to rectify that.
Yeah, there are 2 books that used to be obscure that I'd recommend all the time, and because of movies, they're now, everybody knows about them, and one is Queen's Gambit, and the other is True Grit.
No kidding.
Yeah.
There you go.
They're both in Read This Next, another book of ours, of mine and Sandy's.
I have not read that one. I do have the, well, hold on, it's probably here.
How Not to Write a Novel? Yes, How Not to Write a Novel.
How Not to Write a Novel by Howard and his wife, Sandy Newman. Another phenomenal writer. And, we can, let's use that as our ham-handed transition into the first question.
Sure.
You wear a lot of hats, and to no surprise to anybody who reads a lot of fiction, it's often influenced by our own lives. So the character Roger is a writer and an editor. You are also a writer and an editor, and you're married to a writer as well, which
a much more successful writer.
Yeah, just like Sarah, right?
Yeah.
So it's there's a million questions I could ask here next.
Sure.
I guess basically it boils down to, like, how do you manage that? Part of on this show, we try to sometimes pull back the veil, so to speak, on writing. I feel like in our culture, we tend to think that writers are sort of birthed from the skull of Zeus, like ideas just come out perfect, and like we don't see the behind the scenes. I love how much your book talks about, and your Twitter feeds, both yours and Sandy, talk about the like ghost writers and all these sort of the grisly behind the scenes stuff that nobody ever hears about. So I often like to ask the first questions, often something sort of about the craft of writing or the process or some of that behind the scenes. And I'm fascinated by you being a writer and an editor and married to a writer. Like, what's that like? Are they consciously different hats? Where do they overlap? They all involve language.
Well, they certainly overlap in that I mean, it depends on the kind of editor you are. I mean, if you're ghostwriting, you're basically writing. and you could be like copy editing, you could be a copy editor, and you don't, you don't have to make that magic. You don't have to make prose sing, you just have to make prose work.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're separate. I mean, something I said in that passage is that as an editor, my job is that I only have to make the book that comes to me better. There's nothing scary about that.
Yeah.
When I sit down to write, like anybody else, I'm looking at a blank page, and it's like, that's my worth. That really is. I'm doing my best here, and everybody's going to see it, But when I edit, the book, the best version of the book is already in there, and it's just my job to bring it out. So, I mean, emotionally, it's a very different thing. And I can tell you, this is kind of jumping to something, but the fact that I do live with a writer is that we edit each other. I mean, it's the greatest thing ever. I've got somebody in my apartment who I know I can trust, who will read my stuff and tell me what's good and what's bad. And I do the same for her. And we give each other notes. It happens all the time. And we both have the same response to each other's notes. We get pissed off. And it takes hours until you come around and say, oh yeah, I guess you were right. I'll rewrite that. So that goes on a lot.
I guess that's the part I was kind of wondering about, because my wife and I, in a very different kind of writing, we were 2 of 5, picture this, 2 of 5 co-authors on a teaching book. So 5 people using Zoom and Google Meets back before we all had to do it. So I guess I've been using tools like this for a while. Co-wrote a book on how to teach writing for the high school, like essay writing kind of level. And that took us maybe 5 or 6 months for the first, like working through the first draft. And even just that, like got, tense isn't the right word, because we each had our own chapters. It's kind of a writing for teachers that's a different animal than a novel by 10 miles. But even that got a little
but it is the same thing. You're producing stuff and other people are pronouncing on it. They're saying, they have opinions about it, and you have to pay attention to their opinions. You can't brush it off.
Yeah, but you're in the same house as one of the people whose opinions are coming up. Yeah. So that's why I'm fascinated by your guys.
No, sometimes, like what she's a genuine genius, and when I get her stuff, I can usually look forward to anything I have to say being minor, but if I come across something that's wrong, I start to tense up and, oh my God, I'm going to have to, can I not tell her this? Is there some way I can let her editor, when she sends it in, let them, but I can't. I have to say something.
You're just like sending text messages to her editors.
Yeah. Look for this.
You handle this one.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. I love that. I mean, that makes sense, right? I mean, you just, it's you go small to go big, right? Like you just focused in on one tiny detail and basically summarized marriage, right? Like, so
sure, yeah.
The thing I know is wrong, I can't just come out and say it.
That's right. Yeah,
work through this, we got to set it up,
right?
Oh, that's awesome. And I would agree. I one thing I feel like I didn't get enough sleep last night. I'm doing a lot of stumbling over my words. My apologies, viewers. But I love when husbands shout out their wives. Our culture is weird, the whole patriarchy and toxic masculinity and stuff. And you called Sandy a genius, and I think her work is genius. And I think it's just very, I just kind of want to draw attention to that for a second, because we often act like men have to put down their wives and stuff. I'm like,
oh yeah,
work is genius, So
yeah, no, that's something on Twitter that I just have no use for. Like every once in a while, I'll make a joke that mentions my wife, and I'm really careful to make sure nobody can interpret this as a wife joke.
Yeah,
I hate that. Like,
you too.
You're embarrassing yourself, guys.
Yes.
If she's so horrible, why are you with her? What the fuck is wrong with you? Oh, sorry, I probably
exactly that.
Yeah.
I feel like everybody's gonna get mad at us for dropping F-bombs in defense of our wives is a very defensible reason.
Right.
Like, I'm willing to take that one.
Yeah.
I'll throw myself on that grenade. All right, Howard, this has been a treat. I don't want to keep you all night long, but I've really enjoyed this. So
yeah, me too. So did I.
Yeah, and someday, when the world is open and people are moving around, we'll have you over here in Metro Detroit. And
I would like that.
this is
That'd be
awesome
great.
awesome little art gallery where this was in the before times. We
Well,
actually rebooted this very, very soon. We only got 2 in-person ones before the pandemic hit, but someday we'll have you swing by the art gallery and do a reading.
Okay. And you know, New York is here too.
Someday we'll get out there. We
Okay.
have a couple of good friends in your town, so we'll get
Okay.
out there at some point in time, I hope.
Sounds
All right.
good.
To our
Okay.
regular viewers, thank you. To our new viewers, come back again another time. These episodes debut at 7 p.m. on Wednesdays, but then they're available on Kickstart Farmington's YouTube page in perpetuity until the servers burn up, and you know, whatever. It'll be there as long as you're on to watch it. Go watch our show. We appreciate you taking the time. Howard, thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everybody.
Bye.